fit into the options, so that might be what you're talking about.
Aye. So let's see. So can you all see the browser window there?
Yep.
Right. So in PowerApps, you basically the most basic version of one, where it'll prompt you to make a Canvas app from a data source. You'll just click on the data source you want to use, whether it's SharePoint, Excel, whatever. You find the SharePoint list you want to use, or the Excel spreadsheet from your OneDrive or anything like that. If you're using the SharePoint one, you'll need to point it towards your specific one or your own specific SharePoint, and then it'll bring down a list of your own. So I've just made a little list here called tutorial items that I cannot see the connect button. There we go. And so that's just going to create us like a really, really basic PowerApps app that will let us view a list of our items and then edit and create and delete items from our list as well. So, don't know why it's gone to that screen. You'll also see that, for example, it doesn't always give you the full array of data. Like, for example, this is what we've got in this list here. We've got a title, a description, a quantity, a price, and then an image hyperlink. And you see it's only shown a couple here. So for example, maybe you didn't want to show the quantity, you want to show the price, you just update that. Similarly, when it writes all these in, it usually locks them as well when you use a pre-built data source. So you usually need to unlock them, or maybe that's in the edit screens. I think it's in the edit screens. Where you see it's got this little lock title, you usually need to unlock them before you start doing anything with them. Just by doing that, and then that'll let you mess around with stuff. But this is just a really basic app that's, you've got your list of items, you click onto it, it navigates to the description, you press this edit button, it shows you the edit fields. You can add and delete as well using this, where in this one it actually has a field that should be hidden in PowerApps, so we'll quickly just show what you do to remove that, I guess. So you'd unlock it, and then you just delete it, because it won't actually let you delete it unless you've unlocked it. But for the most part, the app it can give you is really basic. If all you need is an app that can update a list, but for all intents and purposes, that isn't what most people need. It's all right if you're doing something for example, I know the coursework that normally gets shopped around is just an inventory management thing, but that's pretty much the only thing this is good for. All it does is show you a list of all your things. It gives you some basic search features by default based on the title. So for example, I can type this in and it'll filter it to this, but if I type in yellow, it doesn't filter on description. It also lets you switch between alphabetical, and then just has the new item, which just brings you to description. I will say there is actually something about this template one that is not the best practice anymore. There's an issue with select parent where you wouldn't actually want to use that in practice anymore, because if your underlying data source changes, it'll reset what it thinks the parent item is. So I'll quickly go over what you do if you were doing this properly, where you'd set var item, and you just set it equal to, is it not this item? Have I clicked the wrong thing? Oh no, it's, you use a comma. So you'd set var item, this item, and navigate to edit screen 1. This needs me to put a semicolon here because it thinks they're the same line of code. And then the edit screen, it has a field for the data. If I go to the edit form, the data source is tutorial items, and you can just change that to var item. which I believe should still do it, or has it screwed up? Oh no, it's not data source. I think there's forgotten what it is off the top of my head. Basically, you just replace the part where it shows. You just pass a variable containing the item through rather than using that select parent thing. It's just the only real change you'd need to make to this. But realistically, no one's really going to mind if you use select parent. But that's the template app that PowerApps will give you out of the box if you just pump a data source into it. But it's only really useful if you want to update a list. So we're going to go back to this list items, and we're going to go through like the basics of making this like a small relational app. So we're going to go for a blank canvas app this time. We're going to make it in the tablet format. And it's basically going to go through a lot of the same processes as before, but we're going to expand on them a bit more, and hopefully it should all come together. So we'll go to create a gallery here, because basically you'll either start with a data table or a gallery, and it'll prompt you to use a data source. You can go to connectors here. It'll give you access to like things like databases, SQL servers if you've got pro licenses, but we don't. Go to SharePoint, because that's just, I'm going to use a SharePoint list because they're the most useful in my mind, at least. They have their issues, but they are pretty handy. So we'll just go back to this again. And go to SharePoint. You can use Excel though. I'm pretty sure the tutorial stuff all gives you like a list of like it's the Excel thing of flowers, I think is usually the one. So you get your SharePoint list. You get prompted to bring one in here, and you'll see we've now got our list of items. And so we'll quickly go over. You'll see how if I move the title around here, it's actually pulling around the previous ones. It's because a lot of these will have things like this, where they have like referential information for their y-axis and their width. So for example, if I change the width in here to like -300 or -2, I wonder why I did it weird for -300. Like it'll actually truncate it a wee bit, and I actually want to change that to about -350 because I know we're going to have some more information coming through in a while. So I'll just add another text label here and do the same thing as before, where I'm just going to update this to have quantity and then the actual quantity. And then we're going to add the y values to be referential to the subtitle above it. So subtitle 1 y plus subtitle 1 dot height plus 4. So that'll be the same difference between those. We're going to set its height equal to the height as well, just so it all flows together. It also means if the size of your app ever changes, these things will all scale with each other, as opposed to have some things falling out of sync with each other, which can be a bit awkward. And then we'll add another label in here for the price. So we'll just do the same thing again. And you've probably ran into this issue if you've used it ever at all, but the price will have to be passed through this text filter. And this will be probably the most common thing you'll ever write in PowerApps, where this just changes it to pound format, where, hello? Something wrong? We just not working with me today? Or have I done it backwards? Oh, I've done a plus instead of an and. And yeah, just the same again with the referential information. And the same for the X value as well.
Richard, can I ask a silly question? So in the context of the code that you're using, is there like a library somewhere that gives us sort of a listed overview of all the sort of different functionalities and so on? You know, like there would be the equivalent of W3 schools for Python.
It would just be Microsoft Docs would be your best bet for all this kind of stuff. Why is that gone there? Oh, I've done width for some reason. But yeah, your best bet for all this stuff would be just be the Microsoft Docs on it. There's some handy YouTube videos on it as well, which can I can't remember the name of the guy off the top of my head, but it's basically like all the stuff is mentioned in their PowerApps docs, but a lot of the specificity, it's just going to take time to learn because it is a little convoluted at times. Like just little things like knowing how to do the text formatting, like that's all written in like PowerApps docs text. It'll show me that just the text function in PowerApps and all the extensions that I can do to it. Like I can do long date format. This is just where the text format style stuff comes in. Different things for formatting a date. And then like some other things to do with formatting symbols. And this is more for languages because you can do translation stuff through it, but I can't say I've done any of it myself. This is the one that we used for passing the currency through, just to format it properly. Because otherwise, if I just remove this, I suppose, or I can just add it afterwards. Ooh. Oh, well, I screwed it up anyway. But you see what it did there? It just removed like all the full stops. And I suppose we may as well just quickly look at filtering while we're here, because we have this quantity as 0. So obviously, maybe we would want this in our list, but not for like a storefront or something like that. So for that sort of thing, you'd use the filter tag. And when you're using filter, for some reason, you need to put square brackets and an @ sign in front of your data source. I'm not really sure why. But then you just give it the logical condition you want to use. So I just want everything with a quantity that's higher than 0. And now it'll update and chrysanthemums are gone. And I suppose we'll look a little bit at collections quickly next. So I'll just change this because I'm not going to be doing an edit on this one. So we'll change this from select parent to collect call cart this. And then we'll pass through the variables we're going to want. So this is going to define us a collection item, which we can then use as a data source afterwards. I'll do this second, actually. I'll do this after I've done the slider, because otherwise it won't make a lot of sense. So we'll do like a slider to see how many things we want to add to our item. So I'll just do the same thing as before with the X and Y. I'm going to set this Y value to 1.y and put it in line with the title. We're going to set the X value as title.x plus title1.width plus 4. So that'll just align it beside it. Then we'll change the width to like 100. Well, maybe not 100. Is it just being funny? No, it's just being daft. We'll change it to 200 anyway, so that's a bit longer. And we'll change the default value to 0, because it starts off by default, it'll do range 100 to 50. And we'll change the max value to 10, because like it doesn't make a lot of logical sense for our quantities. But we'll actually also see there's a bit of an issue here, because we've got quantity 5 here. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a slider that goes up to 10, even if it is like, we do want the slider, but we want to have more control over the values of the slider. We can do that with lookup. So I'm going to write a conditional statement here using if. So if is going to ask me what a condition is, then what's going to happen if it's true, and what's going to happen if it's false. So our lookup is going to look up the items in our tutorial items, where lookup will take in a source, the condition for the source, and then at the end we'll pump out the value we want. So we'll look up tutorial items based on ID equals this item dot ID, and then quantity. So you'll actually notice if we look at this SharePoint list, there is no ID column, but there are multiple hidden columns in SharePoint lists, and one of them is ID. Another useful one can be like created by. And so that'll just unhide them. And it'll show you like some metadata about the column that isn't actually revealed to the user, but you can still use it to manage the data. And we're going to be using that a little later to do some relational data management, because there are things called lookup columns in SharePoint lists, but they are just quite bad. They're not really fit for purpose. So we've looked up this quantity based on the ID of our item. We've looked up our original data source, and we're checking if the ID is equal to the item that we're currently looking at. And we're going to, if the quantity is greater than 10, then we'll make the max 10. And if not, we'll make it equal to, and I'm just going to copy this. We're going to make it the quantity. So now our slider, for everything like greater than 10, it'll still be 10. But for this, it'll only go up to 5. And we may as well do another little conditional thing here. So we'll click back into this, and we'll make a label. And let me know if you want me to slow down or explain through something again. But we're just going to have like a sum total here to show the value of, like, after they've got the slider, how much everything's going to cost. So we're going to take the quantity, we're going to multiply it, or we're going to take the price and multiply it by the value of the slider. And then we're going to wrap that all in a text thing again, because like I say, this will probably be the most common thing you do with PowerApps, is telling it that you want your number to be in a text format. And you see that there now, where I'll just line that X up properly.
Random question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So see the way you've got that doing like a sum total? Is there a way that we could put like a box at the bottom that does like an overall total?
Yep.
The updates as we go down? Could
Yep.
you show us how to do that, please?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. I'll do that just after this next thing here, where I'll show you how to
Whenever.
add. Yeah, because it'll make more sense in the context of the collection that we're going to add it to. So now that we've got like a wee slider and the sum total value here, we can look at adding it to our cart. And we'll just do the same thing as before. And this will be similar to if you've used JSON. I don't know if any of you would be familiar with it, but passing the quantity as the value from the slider, the title as the title of the data, price, the sum total, and we're also going to pass through the ID, because we're going to use that in the next step to look something up. Just because you don't want to be passing through redundant information. Wrap that all up there, and you'll see this call cart item is turned green. Yeah, it's all behaving grand so far. So we've got that written now. So now if I go to this, and I'll add these two items to the cart. Hasn't actually changed anything there, like visibly. But if we go to view collections now, and this will show you all the internal collections of your app, and we'll see that it's kept all this data for us. So now, if I go back in, we can add a second gallery that uses that as a data source. It'll just behave pretty much the same as before, but you'll notice that we've got this, this picture tag and we didn't pass it through a URL. We can actually use the lookup here again. Hopefully this doesn't mess up. back tidy. And hopefully now, because it decided to not behave yesterday, yep, it's updated the picture. So even though the image isn't actually part of the cart item, we can still summarize it there.
Did you get that working today?
I did. It should have worked yesterday. I don't know why it didn't, but now we'll look at making a sum total for this basket here. So you're going to do that with, I believe it is with, but I'll double check. And then you st sum call cart sum total. And I believe that should be it. Why are you being funny? Oh, I've forgotten to close the brackets here. And so now we've got an order total here. So this is basically you're creating a variable called st that is equal to the sum of all the sum totals of the cart. And then you're returning that as this text item here. Does that make sense? Or is that a little convoluted?
I think it makes it. You see, if you're applying that to a second screen, Richard, is the same code just on a second screen too.
What do you mean? Sorry.
So at the minute you have that on the one screen. So if we were adding a new second screen, so I guess the logic being, if I'm looking at the shop front here and I'm saying I want 2 pink rose and 2 lilies,
Yeah.
I'd expect the cart to appear on a second screen.
Mm-hmm. That can work too. I'll even show you how to pass that. Well, you can call the collection from anywhere because it is just a data source. I'll just update this to make this make a little more sense. And I'll just show that that's still working there as well. But now this should update to 16. But yeah, so I'll make the new screen now just to show you. But yeah, for example, if you wanted to do the exact same thing, because the cart isn't sacred or anything like that, it's a data source you can call from anywhere, and it's just the same thing. Like it would be the same as if you were looking up data from somewhere as well. Like you're just using this data source and then running a query on it. Like this would be the same if, like you could use the tutorial items data source in there, for example. Like a lot of these things just have what you're looking to do with it, basically. So this, you're looking up to sum up all the sum total ones, but similarly, for whatever reason, you could do price. And it wouldn't really work the same, but it would just sum up all of the price columns. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to do in this context, but does that make sense? Or
Yep. Cheers.
grand. So I'll just do a bit of housekeeping here because we've got our basket, but we've got some issues here. Like we've got this plus button that shows up, and you can add a quantity of 0, and that's not particularly useful. So for a start, we'll change this. We'll change this button from right to remove, and we'll remove call cars as item. That's just going to let us delete things from our cart, and that'll just, behaves exactly the way you'd think it would. Pretty simple stuff because it's all working on an item basis. And then the other thing would be, well, maybe we shouldn't be letting them do that. So we'll go to the display mode here. And so this is always set to display mode edit. So we're going to wrap a conditional statement around this. So if the slider has a value that's greater than 0, it'll be in edit mode, but otherwise it'll be disabled, which will gray it out. So now the only way this is accessible is if there's actually anything to pass through. And we may as well do that to the visibility tag here. There's no real point in graying it out because it's meaningless if the sum total is 0. So But we've also got another little issue here where well, I suppose we should also be resetting these sliders when we actually click on them. So are you going to let me click on the button? So we'll go to the on click quickly. And we're already adding something to the collection, but we also want to reset the slider when it's clicked. Have I done this wrong? Evidently. What about? Oh, yeah, I know what it is. I've not put a semicolon here, so it's angry at me. Yeah. Oh, whoops. So now, why is it? Where is my collection gone? What have you done with my beautiful collection? All right, it's because it thought I had changed the items in the collection there, that it had wiped it out. So we'll just add these back in again. But now we'll see that if we go and try and add an item that we already have in, it'll just add it a second time. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to introduce you to patch. So I'll just remove that one again. And we'll go back to this. So patch is basically update. So instead of using collect to write to it, we're going to create a conditional statement that says if it exists in the collection, update, otherwise add it. And we've got what we need for add written here. So I'll just put another bracket here. Press enter here. And now we'll do the lookup for the collection. There's our conditional statement. And now we're going to use patch. So patch takes in the data source. So that's going to be call card. The record, which will just be the same as this. The lookup statement for the card based on the condition. And then the record that we want to, and the data that we want to update. So that's going to be, we want to update quantity to, and this is a weird thing about PowerApps, but you can't do a self-referential thing. So I can't just say quantity plus slider. That won't actually work. So I'm going to have to do a lookup here again. Thankfully, we've got it written here, where we just take the quantity and update it. Why is it annoyed at this? What have I done wrong? I've forgotten brackets because I'm a fool. A damn fool. So that'll update the quantity, but we also want to update. Now, what are you mad about? Oh, what the heck? Invalid use of dot. Are these the wrong way around? I've done something stupid here. Give me 30 seconds. Do you figure it out? Well, thankfully I can cheat and look at my reference notes. Hmm? Hi. Laptop's being funny. I'll write the rest of this while the laptop's being daft. But we'd also want to update the sum total too. So we'd be doing the same kind of thing as this, where instead of taking the quantity, we'll be looking up the sum total.
Is it the use of a curly bracket before quantity, but not closing curly bracket?
It could, no, the closed curly bracket's here. And that's all wrapped properly. What is it not like about product ID? Oh, right, yeah, it's ID. It's because we're not actually in that part yet. We're in, field name. Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot we weren't in the basket. I'd be using the ID here because this is still looking at the original list. And then that now. Okay, so now we've got the patch statement. You can use this format text thing to make it look better, but now we've got more clearly delineated an if statement. So if you look up the item based on the product, or if you look up to see if the cart contains a product ID equal to the item that you're trying to add, if its quantity is greater than 0, then you'll just add to the quantity the value from the slider, and you'll update the sum total with the current sum total plus the sum total of the items you're adding. And if not, then you'll add the new item. So now if we go into this, it's deleted them again. Why have you done this? But now this will update to 4, and you'll see our order total keeps updating along with it. That's to 2, and that's to 3. So we'll quickly add a navigation button in here since we already have the next page. But this will be like go to cart.
And Richard, you see what you just done there for the order total? Say I wanted like a subtotal, so a subtotal against the rose price, a subtotal against spider plant. Is that just basically replicating what you've just done?
Well, we've already passed through those items, but we can do that again quickly. We can just, we can either put price and type in this item dot sum total, and then just wrap the text thing around it. Put the brackets in the wrong place. Forgotten to put that there. You can just add that in there and that'll show you the breakdown. Similarly, you don't need to pass through the sum total, but it just makes it a little easier to manage when we're getting to the final way we're looking at the data. Because you could easily
You're
just...
making this so easy.
It's just a case of thinking about what sort of data you want to hang on to. So for example, this makes a lot of sense if you could pass through the image into the collection too, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be as part of your order, which is why I've not passed it through, but instead have looked up the image. But something like a sum total, a price, like an individual price, the quantity of the items, the name of the item, like those things do make a bit more sense. In theory, you could just look up the title as well, but just because of the nature of SharePoint lists, they're not particularly readable by ID. Like they don't really have joins like databases do. You can actually do a little bit of lookup stuff, but none of it's, you can't write to the lookup columns in SharePoint lists. So they're really annoying in that respect because you need to manually add each of your lookup columns and then select the ID you want to look up and then like manually select the columns you want to look it up based on. So I'll just quickly, I'll change this to navigate and screen 2 because that's just the default name of the other screen. You'd rename all this stuff obviously if you were doing it properly, just so it's not going to end up really convoluted with like all these titles with specific names. And we're also going to check if the cart is empty. We're going to put a conditional statement around that and either write disabled or edit. So now, if I take all these items out, this will gray out. You won't be able to do anything with it. until there's actually something in there. Then you'll be able to go through here. So I guess now we'll make our like proper order checkout. So we'll go to our gallery again, and it'll basically be the same as that previous gallery before. We've got the lookup here. Got the same things as before. We probably don't need the description in this one, so we'll just add in the quantity or the price, I suppose. But we'll actually do something a little different here. We'll add in a text input, which I'll have the default text, this item.quantity. The text input is outside of the gallery. That's something you'll do all the time. You'll accidentally like put something, you'll try and put it into your, I'm just rushing through with the X and Y's here as well, because I know this has been going on for a wee while, but so you say you maybe want them to be able to edit things like the quantity and the subtotal here, or sum total, or whatever. So we'll just put this in front of it as well to say quantity. This is going to get a bit sloppy just because I'm rushing. And then another label for the sum total. And once again, we need to quickly run through the text, make it look like actual readable nonsense. So we're going to do something here where we'll say they may get to here, and they want to change their item. And we'll change this just to the we'll just do the same thing as we did on the previous one there if they want to remove it. But say they maybe want to update the quantity on this page. So we'd go to the onSelect and would actually just take that patch function that we used before, or sorry, onChange, and would actually just go back to the gallery here. And since we've already written the patch function in here, we can just take all that and shrink that down and put that into the onChange function. We're going to need to change it to product ID, just because we are actually dealing with the cart this time. And we're going to need to change this to text input to dot value. I think it's actually dot text because it's a text value. But now, as long as this is compiling, there we go. So now if we do this, if we update the quantity, did that just add in the 2 there? Or it did. I've not actually done it right. I've used the exact same code, but that was to like update the value. What we actually want to do is not look up this value at all. And we just want to look up look at our text input. So change the quantity to the text input and change this to the text input times the price. And now why are you angry at me? Scholars are divided. Does not match the type number, find type text. So let's see. If I change this, yep, this is just because the format of the text box is incorrect. So now that we've changed that back to number, hopefully it's not angry at me. Might still be, you never know.
Richard, did you show them the like where you have the slider inside the design box, otherwise it doesn't
Yes, I did, yeah. Okay, it just, yeah, all I needed to do there was take out text. Weird. Why is that disappearing? It is updating the value, but it is disappearing. Who knows why? I left in the reset function? No. Well, I don't really know why that's happening. Should not be deleting the information from within that. Let's see. Go back to the default here. Maybe it's changed. No, it still should say this item, not quantity. Is it going to be mad if I change it back to text? No. Okay. Well, I don't know why that's deleting itself. So I guess it's just being a bit awkward today. Unless that's on the on select. No. You can always just set it, I guess. Really? You don't like that either? How rude. Well, I don't know why that's deleting, but you'd basically do, like, you can put the patch within the text inputs and have it update in real time as well. So we'll just quickly add an order form in here so I can show you how you can use some of the other data. So we're not going to use this because this is what you do to create a form from a data set. So we're going to add a couple of text inputs over here. Because we do want people to be able to actually like submit their order. I need to put it all through. So this one we're going to use because while you're on PowerApps, all of your data can be pulled from Active Directory within reason, whatever has been made available. So you could prompt a user to type this stuff in and then like add a bunch of nonsense to try and make it mandatory or not. But it's much easier to just wherever possible, do not do that and just let it be autofilled because people get stuff wrong all the time. And so say we'd also want an input for, say we want them to leave comments or something like that to do with their order. So we'd actually change this from text, or we'd leave this as text, but would change the mode to multi-line, just to make it more readable. It'll mean the word wraps things like word wrap apply correctly, and then maybe we want them to select a date that they would collect the item on, or whatever. So we'll add in this date picker, and we'll add a button in here now. That's going to be our submit one. And this is where things are going to get really convoluted. But we're basically going to look at, okay, we're going to be creating 2 new data sources now in our list to hold the order and then the items from the order. So we'll make a blank list called tutorial orders. And so we've got title here, which isn't particularly useful, but we can use that for name. So we'll rename it quickly. I'll add the column email. And you can put email validation on this kind of thing too, usually, and things like column validation, but it's easier just to put the validation on the front line in PowerApps, or to do things like where you abstract what the user can do, either by using drop-down lists or text inputs, just to try and like preemptively stop someone from messing around with it. And then we'll add the comments field in here. we'll add the collection date or order date. We'll just call it date for simplicity. We won't include time for the time being. And then we'll also add in a number, which we're going to call order ID. Or sorry, we don't actually need that one here. That's going to be for the next column. But then we're also going to create another list, which is going to hold all of our items. So quickly make that one. So we'll leave in the title because that's what we've called it before. And we'll look quickly back at our Power App and we'll look at our collection because that's basically what's going to be passed through here. And we have price, product ID, quantity. That is not working as intended. Sum total and title. So we'll also add in, I'll change this just so it's gone and I've done something wrong with that quantity update thing and I can't figure out what it is off the top of my head. So we'll just add these other things in here. So I'm just going to split the screen here so I can see them both. We're going to go for currency, price, tell it the format. Number, quantity. Come on, get this pop-up item away. Currency, total. And we've got the title. And now the last thing we need to add in is order ID, which is going to be our referential lookup column. Or, well, it won't really behave like that because we could just add in, I'll show you how to do the columns like the way that SharePoint lists want you to use them, but I don't think they're particularly good or particularly useful. So that's basically why I've not done that. So let's see. I'll go back here. I'll just remove this and go back to hello. Oh, well, it's because that one's erroring. If I remove this one, it will no longer error, hopefully. No? Hello? Let's try removing both. Going back to the first screen. Collections. You didn't quantity. Okay, I don't know what it was angry about. You'll get things like that where sometimes it'll just be deciding to be frustrated at you for whatever reason, and it'll take a wee while for it to update. I'll just make this navigation button. And to go back to the previous screen, and so we'll go back here. We'll just put some things in our cart again. We'll go to our cart. Maybe just select the date here. And now I'll quickly update this. Oh, we're going to have a couple of things to do here. And this one, I'm pretty much just going to be like, I'll type in a bunch of code and explain it afterwards because it's, in fact, I may just nick it off the document that I've got written here because it's convoluted and awkward. And it's easier for me to talk through it afterwards because it's going to be really long. So let's see. Here we go. Come on. Come on, select. Check them up. Right. So this won't be this will probably error as soon as I paste it in, which it has. But that's because we've not actually added these data sources yet, so we'll quickly do that now. And like I say, if there's anything I'm doing that's like confusing, just let me know and I'll try and break it down into a way that's a bit more understandable. Because like this stuff can get pretty convoluted, particularly when you're dealing with, like, particularly when I'm trying to rush through it a little bit here. But, so eventually this will calm down and not be angry at me. Okay, so we'll actually add another column because I'd forgotten that I'd done one for order total. Just add that one in too. Just another currency column. So now we have our tutorial orders column. This is a little funny. Should this not be default? Oh, no, right. Order total. Oh, it's because none of these exist, right? Because they all have the default names. So which one is which? I'm going to have to rename a couple of these just so I know which one is which. So this will be email. And you'd use things like prefixes like txt, underscore, all that kind of thing usually, but just for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to blast through this quickly. Name, and then date. Right, so let's go back to this. Expand this all out again. So title will just be name. Did I call it title or did I change it? I did actually change it to name. Name. Email. Comments. So if I cut the rest of this out for the time being, and this is still being mad at me, why? So we're patching tutorial orders, which is the name of the data set. And we're using defaults, which is basically, default is the write statement. So we're actually writing the ID in here, or we're writing in the first order using this command. But then we're also calling it afterwards. So if you use patch on a data source and use defaults, it'll write if it doesn't exist there. Oh no, it's just not angry. Okay, it's back to being angry. Never mind. Right. Why are you so annoyed at me here? Patch has some valid functions. Variable, and then the value. Because we're also around this, we're doing set, because we're going to write the order and then pull through the ID into this variable record ID column. Have I forgotten some brackets? Is that it? No, maybe. I'm going to quickly cheat and look at the other one again. Oh, laptop, would you stop locking? I'll paste the rest of this stuff back in for the time being, I guess, too. So let's see. What have I done wrong? Because the syntax of this seems correct, so I'm guessing I've just left out or left in a comma somewhere, and I just can't see it at a glance. And it doesn't actually mind for the most part if you've done things like forget data. So it will let you away with like writing with incomplete data as long as the underlying data source doesn't have that column as required.
Do the indents need to be the same in the open brackets and closing brackets?
They don't. This is you can write the entire thing without formatting if you want. It's just that like it just makes it a little easier to read and explain in theory. So let's go back to this. Just taking a look at my reference stuff again. So we've got the item defaults. It is called tutorial orders, right? It's because I'm a dum-dum and had been using subtotal instead of sum total because I'm a fool. Right. So, yeah, that was literally it. I'm just a big dummy. So other than that, what have I done here that it does not like? Oh, it's because we've not, yeah, that's because we've not made a new collection yet. No, that's the whole point of that thing there. Why is this one angry at me? So we're going to make a collection here. So clear collect will basically clear out the previous contents of this collection and then collect basically write to it again. And we're also going to add in this column order ID. Or so we're going to add all the columns from our cart, but we're going to also add in this order ID column. So why are you mad at me? It's always a fun game to figure out why this one's erroring, because this one should not be. Like this one is basically just like creating a collection, and it's
Is it
just
the comma at the end of order ID?
It might be, but it shouldn't care. Like, just because of how it doesn't like the add columns function. But why is that? Oh, I get it. It's because I'm not actually passed in bar record ID, because it's pulling in both title and value from this one, but I'd forgotten to pass through the variable with the item. So in this one, would set, basically this is our important thing where we create the order, but then because, oh, what have I done here? Let's undo that. Because we've also wrapped this in a set, and we've set this variable to the ID that's returned when you create the ID, or when you create the order. So we're then calling the order, and I'll just reveal it here. We're going to call that ID, which it's a hidden column usually, but they are there in the underlying data. We're going to then create a collection called ordered items, which is going to be all of the cart items, but then they're also going to have the reference ID, order ID. And then the last thing we're going to do in this one is just submit it. So for that one, it'll be just collect again to write to the table. That'll be to tutorial order items. And all we need to pass in here is called ordered items. They should be the same. And then the last thing we're going to do here is just do a bit of housekeeping. So we're going to like basically make all these. We're just going to do the same thing as before, where we reset all of these fields that we've just taken inputs from. And we're also going to navigate back to screen 1. And now, if I do this, now what are you annoyed about? What have you done? Specified item. Right, got it. I used full caps ID and order ID. So it was just being a bit nitpicky. It will actually submit it. I'm pretty sure it still submits it if you like use lowercase. It can figure that kind of small mistake out. But now we'll just go in here. We'll reselect our date. And if we submit this order, oh yeah, silly little thing that I'd forgotten. We want to clear the cart again for when we go back. Because we don't want to go back and just have all the items that we've just basically ordered in there. And this will run for a wee while. And then we'll go to the navigation. And now if I reset these, or if I refresh these two lists, where's this one gone? This one should be here first. Well, for some reason that hasn't written, so, but this one has. So I don't know why that's happened. That's just a delight. Let's see. What have I done wrong there? Quickly go up and check this again. So that should be patch tutorial orders. That is what it's called. Default gets all the values, pass them all through. I'll try it once more. What's it flagging up wrong this time, actually? Let's find out. Is it going to flag up the thing that it thinks is wrong? Oh, yeah, that's a silly mistake. I should have the product ID in here too. I suppose while we're in here, I'll just update the name of this to be lowercase, just for the sake of keeping it all consistent. Now I will re-update our data sources. Now, why are you angry? Ah. What does it not like about this? No, it just seems happy enough with it. Perfect. My favorite error. Your column doesn't exist. It only exists under the same name. Great. So we'll quickly do this again. If it doesn't work, I'll just manually add in something to show you how to pull down relational data afterwards. So we'll check these out again. Why have you chosen to do this? Right. So we'll quickly cheat because I don't know why that's not passing through the
Switch there, didn't mean anything.
Aye. I'll just show off the column relational data quickly because it's just using the lookup function again. But so I'll cheat basically and just add in these orders. I don't know why it's not written that one. Suppose I'll actually just look it up. It would be 45. And we'll save that. That'll be ID 1. This one here, and let that order come to 50. So now we actually have these two things, these two bits of data, and based on that, we can actually just go back and do the same sort of thing that the original import data source did, but we're going to do it a little differently, where we're going to go back to this, just make it from blank again. Create the gallery from our orders. We're going to pull in both of these data sources again, because we'll be needing them both at some point. So this is chosen to make it out of order items, but we actually want it out of orders. So we've got our two orders here, and then we'll make another screen. And we'll put an edit form here. Connect this to orders as well, which it seems reluctant to do. And now, it's the item column, right. So this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where we'll set that equal to var item. And instead of that, we'll go to and now if we click this, it'll bring in all of the edit data. But say we also, as part of this form, we want to have the gallery of the items that were ordered. Go to the order items. I'll mess around a bit more with that to do with the sizes at another time. But we'll just also filter the data that comes through this and go where order ID equals var item dot ID. And so now the only things here, we'll change this to sum total. And now we just have our relational data form where we can do the lookup here, I guess. I have not actually brought through the data source for that. We'll just add it quickly for the sake of just wrapping everything up. No problem. We're going to be looking it up based on var items product ID, then taking the image. Name is invalid. What do you mean name is invalid? Ah, yes, it's just this item dot product ID. Right. So that, as long as it's not going to be silly with me again, should eventually load in the image. Sometimes it takes a while, but that's just how you'd pull in the, we'll unlock this as well, just because I want to change the size. But yeah, that's basically, I've not put a back button in here. Right. But yeah, that's basically how you'd make your relational data source. I don't know why the image isn't being pulled through because it was in the first one. But
I think you put it as dot price instead of product image or something.
oh, probably. That sounds like something I'd do. Hold on. Oh, yep. There we go. So now, and now if I go back to this previous one, oh, I guess it's going to be silly, won't it? Because for some reason it's not writing to the order table. Let's see, why have you chosen to make me look silly today? It was the same with Jeff yesterday when I was going over it with him, like it just decided something would go wrong. And I'm like, why? Why have you done this? Name, email, comments, date, order total. I don't think it should care about what order these are in, but for the sake of its own pedantry, we'll try it and make sure. Patch tutorial orders. Order total with the item. Right. We'll try this once more. If it doesn't feel like complying, then that's fine. I'll just manually add in its manually add the thing in afterwards. So let's see, have you actually submitted it? No, of course you've not. But thankfully it has submitted it to this one. So we'll just change these to order ID 3. 3, 3, 3. I can't remember what it was. I was like 36. Why didn't I make it 33? But now if we just refresh this data source, just full screen this again. I may not even need to refresh the data source. You can actually put a button to do that as well. If you not within it, but if I do that should do the same thing where it just refreshes the data source. Yeah, there it goes. Where now it's pulled that one in, and yeah, we just see the same stuff as before. Or in theory, hello? Where's your other item gone? How rude. Oh, it's because I've not actually submitted the ID here. Quickly refresh this data source. Do want to put another update in? But yeah, that's basically how you do basic relational stuff. I'll just show you the relational column in SharePoint list here quickly. I don't like it. Use it if you want. But you need to go into the more column types, look up. It'll give you the option of bringing up the other list that you've used. So we used orders. You've got ID, which is the column we want to look up on. And then maybe we just want title, email, date. And and maybe created by or something like that. This is just how the lookup columns work in SharePoint lists. I don't think they're particularly useful, but they do have like some use in this kind of thing, where you basically go into your edit view now, and this will let you look up the IDs from the order ID table. And when you select one, it'll pull in all the complementary data associated with it. But you can't automate this process, and it's incredibly frustrating as a result. Because like if you want to actually, if you want to have you want to display this data in a non-relational way, like say you want to print it all out as an Excel spreadsheet and make it more readable, it just becomes a little awkward, which kind of sucks because it is pretty handy to have, but the fact that it can't be automated is incredibly frustrating. Yeah, I guess are there any questions about any of that at all? Or like, I know it was kind of like a real blitz through a bunch of stuff that you can do with PowerApps just to sort of display that, you know, you can make relational models as well, because I know it can be a little tricky. And then like how you would basically use things like collections and variables and some of the functions like patch, collect, clear collect to manage your data. Is there anything that you feel that I particularly missed or that I could explain better that would help you at all? Or
I think it's been great. Really appreciate that, Richard. I suppose there's a lot there, and probably it's one of those things now. It just takes us as we're navigating through the assignment and getting, you know, closer to some of the functionality.
yeah, I'll just I'll put a thing in Shane Young.
Not gonna lie, if I pull off something similar to what you've done, I think I'll be flying.
Yeah, this guy Shane Young has a bunch of really, really useful videos on how to use PowerApps. They have a lot of his videos you can just work along with, but in general, like, and a lot of them are probably a bit longer than they need to be, but they're great for having something to be explained down to the very, like very fine detail. Like maybe he goes in, like, I feel he goes into a bit too much detail at times, but I think that's because PowerApps is designed for like legitimate, like no code. Oh, Jeff's got his pass this time. Like they're legitimately designed for people that like have never coded before in their lives. Like a lot of these no code solutions are supposed to be very lightweight for people that are not familiar with them at all. And so like his explanations are aimed towards those sorts of people. So like, for example, the one on variables is 16 minutes long, but it doesn't take 16 minutes to explain to a developer what a variable is. You know what I mean? Like you know what that is. It's like it's just something you set and can use elsewhere. How can I find the chat on this? You are not Jeff.
I just need to check something in this room, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let me see. I'll stop sharing my screen and see if that helps. I know, is there a chat log for this? Or maybe I just don't have access to it because I'm not Jeff. If not, I will email this YouTube channel to Jeff and he can forward it on to you guys. But it's very useful for any PowerApp stuff that you may not understand. It's all explained very well.
In the corner along the top, do you have a speech bubble with 2 lines in it and a little red dot?
Give us a second and I will see. A speech bubble. No, I don't see one. Give a second. It says I'm not a member, so I can't post something into this, but I'll send it to Jeff and then he can put it into the chat afterwards. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to go over. There are other types of Power Apps like model-driven apps and portal apps, but I can't imagine you've been asked to make any of those. The portal apps are more to do with like having people from outside your organization interact with something, interact with data within your organization. And they're also like more designed to use with Dataverse, which we don't have access to because we don't have the VIP licenses available to everyone yet, which is stupid. We don't even have them available for us. So like a bunch of stuff to do with like model driven and portals sort of relies on Dataverse to work properly, particularly like model driven like seems more to do with like interacting with like data flows and other things from the Power Platform like Power Automate. Like for example, oh, there's Jeff back now. Did you get my message there?
So it come up to there's a message.
Yeah,
Then it wouldn't open it.
that's interesting. I can't paste a message into the.
Yeah.
Huh, that's weird.
Nice share.
But yeah, if no one has any more questions or any queries or anything like that, I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah, it just says I don't.
Send it through me.
Mhm.
Post it on that.
Aye. But yeah, is that everything, or is anyone wondering anything in particular about like some of the Power App stuff? Or are we good to go? Give us a wee hands up. I don't know if you can do the thumbs up. Oh, you can. Great. Okay, well, that'll pretty much be me. I'll pass it back over to Jeff then, unless, or you just, is that us for the day, or?
I had chat to them a wee bit there.
Yeah, no
Not
problem.
just yet.
Cool. Well,
Thanks very much, Richard.
I'll get signed off of here and let you get logged back in.
So much.